Welcome to Pop-O-Holics, the show about hot takes on the hot tasty pancakes. I'm your host, Christian, and as always, I'm joined by my two best friends.
Chris Conkling.
He's a hunk.
Brian Dupree.
He's the cute one. And today, we are so excited to be joined by a very special guest. We haven't had a guest in a while. And so it has
been a while.
It's always amazing to be able to welcome one. Bradley, you might know him from the You've Gotta See This and Recast Ellipses cast. We're so happy to welcome Bradley to the show. Bradley, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. So excited to be here. Excited to talk movies as always. It's my favorite thing to talk about, and so I'm stoked, man.
Well, I hope you're ready, because around here, we do things a bit different, all right? And by different, what do I mean? I mean, we bring in the news, the latest pop culture news, except for it's wacky. Okay, normal movie podcast and pop culture podcast, the news is normal. Normal, meh, okay? But Brian whacks it up. We've got a slide whistle.
I don't know if that's what we want to call it, but we'll workshop it.
Yeah. He's got yucks. It's great. Then we talk about what we've been consuming in the world of pop culture, but it's not just movies. It can be anything, but it's mostly movies and TV shows and other stuff. And then we have a little bit of community feedback. Up top, though, I would like to just, Bradley, give you a second. Tell us about your shows that you do.
So we've got, it's hosted by my younger brother and I, Blake. And so on You've Gotta See This, we talk movie news, we talk movie reviews of whatever's streaming, whatever's playing in theaters. We love talking about all aspects of movie news, whether it be stories about casting, stories about new directors' projects, new movies in general. I love casting news personally because I'm a big fan of actors in particular and directors. Those are my two favorite categories of when it comes to movies. So we focus on that a lot, then jump into whatever came out that past week. And then over on Recast Cast, we take a classic movie and we recast it with modern actors because inevitably every movie gets remade. So we decide, hey, why don't we get ahead of the curve and cast these movies the way that we'd like to see them when they are inevitably remade. So that was a lot of fun to do.
I recently listened to the Justice League episode. Incredible. Had some awesome C4S guests on there as well. But all of your choices, fun. You guys all had such clear ideas for the sort of movie you wanted to make and casting around that. So would definitely recommend checking that one out.
Hell yeah. We just did The Wizard of Oz, and that one was really fun. And we've got Mean Girls coming up next.
Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah. You know, admittedly, because I'm a great host, I didn't check out Recast Cast. I did check out your other show, and I was blown away by your immense knowledge of all the different actors in projects and stuff, and you were referencing everything I directed, and I'm like, this guy's got IMDb pulled up right in front of his face, and obviously it's coming from the dome as well, because I have IMDb pulled up, and I mess up all the time on who does what. I'm wrong.
Truth be told,
like 100%.
Brad and Blake do what we do, but better.
Well,
I don't know about that.
That's why we got that thing called the different factor. But Recast Cast, I'm really excited to check it out because just knowing how, listening to a couple episodes of You Gotta See This, amazing wealth of knowledge about like film history and stuff. So I can't think of anyone more qualified to take on that role. It's a very good idea for a podcast too. Would be a shame if someone stole it from you.
No, oh gosh.
No, we wouldn't be. I wouldn't be
ominous.
I'd be like,
Battlecast.
It'd be like, Christian, you've casted Dwayne the Rock Johnson into all 5 characters in Reservoir Dogs. Yes, he's Mr. Orange.
Dude, I would watch that movie.
And it's been greenlit already.
Oh, it's done. Putting you out of business. All right. So a little thing up top. First of all, this is obviously coming to the audio feed, but also the YouTube. And YouTube watchers, did you know that if you comment below or any of the weekly uploads or the Prey review, all that came out this August, and subscribe to the channel, you'd be entered to win yourself a digital copy of Predator, the original starring Arnie Schwartz, on 4K digital. Movies Anywhere compliant too. It's not going to be like, you got to put this on Vudu, and you're like, ugh. That's the worst. No, we ain't going to.
Honestly, though, it's not the worst. It's not the worst.
It's true. It's not the worst, and I think you can choose Vudu. That's the brilliant of the way that at least 20th Century Fox did do their 4K releases. Can't say the same is going to happen upcoming, but we'll see. It'll be like, oh, you want the movie Disney Plus, and you're like, but I want a copy, and they're like, but Disney.
No,
Plus.
no, it's on the Disney Plus server.
But no, it's not anymore. We're going to talk about that later. So let's jump into it. Let's delay no further and jump in the way we always do on this show, which is with Brian's Wacky News Corner.
Start on wacky, start on wacky. Start on wacky, start on wacky. Welcome back, everyone, from the drug-filled break from everyone on the podcast here. Apparently, we're all rearing and ready to go.
It's off camera, Brian.
Now
You can't talk about it. It's off camera.
First piece of news this week. Cathy Yan, director of Birds of Prey, which is one of my favorite DC movies. We all really enjoyed it when we covered it on the podcast. Actually just uploaded it a couple weeks ago to our YouTube channel for a Throwback Thursday. Had another great guest, Hilary Wise, on there. She has signed on to direct an adaptation of, or direct a live action series adaptation of Paprika based on the Yasutaka Tsutsui novel of the same name for Amazon Studios and Hive Mind. This is something that has been adapted previously as an animated film by Satoshi Kon. And I just bought the Blu-ray of this about 2 months ago and haven't watched it yet.
Have you ever seen it before, Brian?
I have not seen it.
Oh, Brian.
This is the Blu-ray copy I have. Brad's pulling it up. Yes, very nice. So I recently acquired this because I had heard that this movie was a huge influence on things like Christopher Nolan's Inception. Mm-hmm. Satoshi Kon. I did see Perfect Blue, which is another influence, maybe even debatably things stolen by Darren Aronofsky for some of his movies. Requiem for a Dream specifically. Very going off on a tangent here. This source material is clearly great. People are inspired by it. I'm super excited to come to this. Inception is a great movie as well. And we're expanding it into a series here. So hopefully we can do a little bit of a new take on this story, I think, or maybe closer to the novel itself. This is a character-driven sci-fi series with a mind-bending narrative centering around a technology that allows us to invade people's dreams. So as I said, Inception, obviously, this wasn't the first thing to put this idea out, but I think it was one of the most successful and well done that has stood the test of time since it came out. This is Yan is going to write and direct this, and she will also be producing this with Sarohia. And I don't think we have any cast news for this yet.
Not yet.
But, okay, so obviously you guys are have seen Paprika or are fans of it. Brad, you showed me the hard evidence. What do you think about this, the original adaptation, the original story, and this new potential series?
Maybe throw in a couple cast there. Maybe cast it a bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes, honestly. It's an idea in a world that's ripe for expansion. And so I'm excited to see how they do that and how they expand upon the original idea and concept and flesh this out into a full series. Satoshi Kon, I mean, you can't say anything more than that. Like he is
iconic.
An absolute master. Every single movie, Perfect Blue is my favorite of his, but Paprika is fantastic. Horribly sad story, gone too soon. But yeah, I am really excited to see what they do with a live action adaptation of this story. And I can't wait for the incoming Twitter people being like, they ripped off Inception, not knowing that Nolan cites it as an influence. So it's like, I don't know. I'm
do
excited
your research,
for
Twitter.
Yeah, I'm excited for the inevitable shitstorm of accusations of plagiarism. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with this series for sure.
Paprika discourse bound to be just flames.
Oh yeah.
Chris, what about you?
I too, like Brad, am excited. However, when it comes to anime adapted to live action, I'm always cautiously optimistic. And while all of us loved Cathy directing Birds of Prey,
bad.
None whatsoever. I will not reference them. While we all loved Cathy on her direction in Birds of Prey, I'm still hesitant, just because when it comes to anime, especially a film like Paprika, it's mind-bendy and beautiful animation, and it just doesn't always translate the right way. However, if it has the proper budget and the right direction and a good cast, I'm hoping that with the good creative team, we can get something really special out of this project. But again, always cautiously optimistic because these don't always go very well. So,
yeah, I prefer the Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch's pronunciation, which is Paprika, as we all know. I've never seen it, being a huge Nolan fan in high school and stuff, and coming like early on, I think even before Inception, he openly said like, "Oh, I love like anime, and I love the style of it." And Paprika was always something that he had mentioned. So I still need to see the original. So I'm a bad boy, not a bad boy. I'm a bad boy, and I should see it because I was bad. Anyway,
for your punishment for being bad,
so bad, such a bad boy. Back to you, Brian.
That is Cathy Yan, executive producing and directing a live-action series based on Paprika. So the next piece of news, we have a King Kong live-action series tentatively titled, and they built this up for a long time. Tell me what you guys think. King Kong.
Brilliant.
Really reaching for separating themselves from previous
Genius.
King
previous
Kong
stuff here.
parenthetical TV series 2023. That's how you know what it is.
Parentheses video version. So this is
the one not in the MonsterVerse, because we have a MonsterVerse series coming in 2023 too.
Right.
Excuse me, Brad. That is not.
That's
the king.
Kong. That's Kong.
That is not the king. There's no crown.
True.
On that Kong's head.
How dare you compare Kong to King Kong as if they are one and the same?
Any relation to Kang Dynasty, or is that just?
Oh, there might be portals in this. Let's be honest. Remains to be seen. This is coming from James Wan's production company, Atomic Monster. Is going to be the first live action series in the Kong universe and tracks the original story of King Kong. This is something that presumably, obviously, most of the King Kong movies, the first ones, are kind of origin story-ish. This is written by Paper Girls creator Stephanie Folsom, a show that I haven't seen yet, but I'm very excited to dig into once I do. And it's going to explore the mythology of King Kong's origin story and the supernatural mysteries based on his homeland. So this is going to be also from not only from the original books by Marion C. Cooper, but we're also going to pull from some of the novelizations that have been done more recently by Joe DeVito. So hoping to get a new angle that is kind of, for me, a lot of the most recent MonsterVerse movies, the mythology and world building, aside from obviously the cool visuals and action, is kind of what I'm in it for. And I really like that stuff.
You got to focus on the human characters, Brian. They're the most important part of kaiju movies, don't you know?
So compelling.
Always. I am tentatively cautious about this. This is not the first series that we've heard about. There is one in works at the MonsterVerse as well that is set in the past, I believe, or ties into the monarch, the history of the monarch.
I think it takes place in present and past.
Okay, right. So we'll see if these actually come to be. Brad, what is your history with King Kong, the MonsterVerse, and how are you feeling about this potential iteration?
Oh, and also, who would you cast as King Kong?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I legitimately, let's go with someone like Toby Kebbell, who's an incredible motion capture guy, and he already did it in the Apes movies. So let's give him like the most prestigious motion capture role of all time and have him play Kong, just like his co-star Andy Serkis did.
Hear that, audience? I told you, this kid's the best.
Right off the dome.
But I'm super excited for this show, honestly. I mean, Disney Plus has been on a roll for me personally. They dipped a little bit with Moon Knight. I'm not a big Moon Knight hater like a lot of people are. I still had a good time with that show whenever I kind of separated it from the comic. And I've really enjoyed most of the things that they've put out. So I think that it's in good hands. But yeah, my history with Kong, though, the first thing that I ever saw Kong related was Peter Jackson's movie in theaters, and that blew my mind. Had me go back and revisit the original movie. Was working at Blockbuster at the time, and so I had access to all of these movies, these classic movies right there. So yeah, I went back and checked that one out, and then MonsterVerse stuff. I was a pretty okay fan of Skull Island. I love John C. Reilly in it. I love how kind of tongue-in-cheek and cheesy B movie it is, because I think it's self-aware.
That's what I love about it.
In that respect. Yeah. I think that Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston are kind of sleepwalking through it, so it's weird that they're the leads. Ouch. But everyone else is so great in it, and there's some really great comedic improvisers like Eugene Cordero and Mark Evan Jackson in there. We're like huge fans of their podcast work, so yeah, I'm excited to see this new iteration of Kong, because I'm such a big fan of all of the other iterations of Kong.
Chris, what about you?
I too am excited. You know, Peter Jackson's King Kong was one of those movies that made me want to go to film school when I was in high school. So I have a huge appreciation for the history and the character and what it means for Hollywood. So we'll see, how this live action series turns out. James Wan isn't directly tied in any capacity. You said his production company is kind of taking the reins here, but put a monster in his hands. I feel like those are good hands for a monster to be in, So we'll see. Once they add a couple more people onto the creative team, we'll see how this series goes. Hollywood loves doing things in pairs, so we're getting the MonsterVerse thing at Apple TV Plus, and then we're going to get this. And, right now we have House of Dragon and Rings of Power right on the horizon. So we'll see which is better when they end up coming out.
King Kong, I want the origin story. Prince Kong. Back to you, Brian.
Absolutely incredible. So the last piece of news proper this week, Avatar has not so quietly been removed from Disney Plus prior to the upcoming re-release set for September 23rd of this year. So I think it's going to have a 2-week theatrical release, and then shortly after, before the second movie proper comes out, it will be back on the streaming service. But let's be clear about this. They're trying to get their spot back, and they're probably going to get their spot back for number one highest grossing of all time.
They already did.
Oh, did they already? Okay, so they already
currently
have.
Yeah, Endgame is number 2.
They're just building the barrier there.
Yeah,
securing the spot.
And so I got to be honest, this kind of thing, I've always been one of the big physical media pushers here at the podcast, and Christian has recently caught the addiction. Unfortunately,
I returned to it. To be clear.
Yes, exactly.
And I also love physical media, Brian.
You sold your collection. Stop talking. I know what you did.
To upgrade it. I sold it to upgrade it.
I saw what you did. Saw what you did to those poor DVDs. They didn't do anything to you.
I needed Blu-rays, Christian, and now 4Ks. So
it was horrible.
Oh, it's the worst day.
Anyway, Avatar, Brian.
Yes. So obviously the limitations that can come with things only being available on streaming can be a very negative thing, especially with what we've seen happen at HBO Max recently, where things will literally disappear overnight without warning and without physical copies in sight to a large degree with a lot of the streaming content these days. This is something where they've gone out of their way to do a remaster of this movie. It looks absolutely incredible. The movie is meant to be seen in 3D on the biggest screen possible. I'm still a little bit conflicted about it, but I'm going to see this movie in theaters when it's re-released. So I don't know. I think if someone hasn't seen this movie at some point, $3 billion have been spent on this or whatever. Most of you have probably already seen it. But if you haven't, take this as an opportunity to go and see this movie for the first time, because you talk to anyone, and even if they feel wishy-washy about the movie itself now, seeing it back then when it came out was absolutely mind-blowing, and something that has not been replicated for most people since then.
If you were born in the last 10 years and you've never had the opportunity to see Avatar on a big screen, like I'm sure there are a bunch of 10, 12-year-olds out there that have never seen this film. I imagine that experience would be transformational, especially considering that they've done and remastered it. It's going to be awesome to see again on the big screen,
Chris,
or for the first time.
I'm glad you're speaking to the 10 and 12-year-olds, because that is our demo. So.
Yeah, so, those are the people that listen to Pop-O-Holics, the explicit podcast that we release.
that we're spending like 15 minutes on physical media. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's what the kids love.
Exactly. I'm more talking to the parents, to try and provide an exceptional movie-going experience for their children.
Yeah, I know you love the TikTok, but have you heard of the bust block?
Oh my God.
It's kind of
not good.
Yeah. Speaking of block,
no idea what we're talking about now.
Talking about
James Cameron's Avatar, starring Zoe Saldana and Sam Worthington. Brad, I'm interested. I feel like your reaction to this news story, you might have some hot takes for us. How do you feel about this?
So I am excited to see it on the big screen. I am famously not a gigantic fan of this movie. I am a fan of what it accomplished for filmmaking. I'm a fan of the technology that was so groundbreaking and the visuals of this movie. But it's a story that's been, the bones of it have been tread so many times that I wasn't receptive at the time. It's a movie that's been revisited, and I've reassessed it and see it for more than I did originally. But I'm excited for this rewatch, specifically to see it again in IMAX 3D in the 4K restoration, see it in this what I'm sure is what James Cameron wanted it to be seen like from the get-go. So I'm excited to revisit it and hopefully have that love for it grow as I've gotten over my own, expectations that I had for this movie going into it the first time.
Do we know if they're gonna redo the effects in 4K? Because that movie is mostly effects, and typically it's like it's like uneconomical to render effects in 4K. So
it is James Cameron, though.
Yeah,
he's.
But I think if that's the case, maybe this is the reason why it's taken 10 years to come out with an Avatar sequel, because those NVIDIA GPUs are still working to this day. That would be crazy. But if it's not, which I'm expecting it's not, because it literally, like, no one does that. Then I don't understand
the poster that they released.
The poster looks incredible.
They look more enhanced than just like
couple hours on a NVIDIA GPU.
Upgrade.
That image.
There is a new trailer as well.
Okay,
that's out.
All right, I'll have to look into it. I'm speaking from a place I don't know. But if all this is to say, if that movie, the special effects were re-rendered in 4K, that is an insane amount of work, and it's incredibly expensive. So I'd be very curious to look that up.
So go see the highest grossing film of all time again in theaters, kids. 10,
12-year-olds, make sure you do that. I never saw the first. Should I tell another blockbuster joke? Maybe I could do that.
The first one went over so well.
Wait, was that what was?
It was a blockbuster joke.
Busting blocks. Come on. What do you think I was busting? It was for 10 and 12-year-olds, Brian.
I had no idea what was going on. I was completely lost.
I never, I similarly to Brad saw this movie in Bradley. Sorry, I don't know if you don't like me shorting.
Oh, I don't care either way.
Okay, Brad. All right, Brad. Yeah. Brah. I'm gonna let's go, Brad. No, I will call you Bradley. So I historically did not see it in 3D, and I remember going up and being like, "That's what everybody was talking about." I was like, it was just kind of like a fancy Pocahontas, right? And then
I mean, you're not wrong.
It wasn't till later when everybody was like, "That was the most incredible 3D experience ever," and I was like, "Oh shit, I should have saw it there." And I've missed it every other time, and it might be difficult to get in, but I do want to try to catch this in theaters, and I haven't seen it since. So it could be really cool to finally revisit it all these years later in 3D, potentially in 4K effects. It should be cool. Chris, any thoughts?
You know, I've said on this podcast before that when I initially saw it in 3D when it came out, friend of the podcast, Marcus Griggs, and I walked out of the theater and felt as though we had had some type of religious experience. However, upon rewatching, obviously the dopamine highs that initial viewing gave us dwindled. So I've kind of balanced out on how I feel about Avatar over the last decade, but it's still, I think, a great sci-fi movie. And like Brad said, what it did for cinema is exceptional. You know, James Cameron is constantly pushing the boundaries of technology forward, similarly to how George Lucas functioned when he was making movies. So it has to be respected at least for that, even if it's a story that's been told 1,000 times over. But you know, I don't want to be the bringer of doom and gloom here, but buy the things you love in a physical format, because no one ever reads the terms and conditions, and essentially every contract that you agree to online says you are merely renting or borrowing the media. So at any point in time, companies can pull whatever they want to without notifying you, and you will lose the content that you love to revisit. So physical media is still king, in my opinion, despite the convenience of digital. But
is it Kong?
It depends on the licensing rights.
Fair. Yeah, is it universal or not? Well, that is it for the news proper this week. Let's get into some things that are coming out. Starting with TV, we have The Patient coming to Hulu this Tuesday. So this is a psychological thriller limited series created by Joel Fields and Joe Weisberg for FX on Hulu. And it follows a therapist played by Steve Carell, who's held captive by a serial killer played by Domhnall Gleeson, who seeks therapeutic help to curb his homicidal urges. I read multiple descriptions of the show to make sure that wasn't a spoiler. Watched the trailer and I'm like, okay, it seems like this is not.
It shows all that stuff.
It seems to pretty much give away this conceit of the show. There was a show that came out on Apple last year, I think, with Will Ferrell and
Paul Rudd.
Shrink Next Door.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Which this reminds me of, but this seems a lot darker. That seemed to be trying to play the comedy, although what I heard about it seemed to be more drama than it led on from the initial trailers. But this trailer looked pretty good. I gotta say, I don't know if it's ever since Get Out in the trailer for that, but the way these sorts of trailers are cut feels kind of like generic horror movie trailer a little bit. But the concept here and the actors involved make it kind of a very easy sell for me.
Does it have screechy strings? Are there real screechers going on there?
There was like maybe some strings. There was some snaps that you heard periodically. I think it was I
like a clock ticking in the background.
Oh yeah. Brad, have you heard of this show? Did you see this trailer? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm stoked for this one. As soon as this was announced a while ago, whenever the cast came out that this existed, I have been counting on the days until this show comes out because I am the biggest Domhnall Gleeson fan in the world. He is one of my absolute favorite actors, from Ex Machina to About Time, one of the most underrated movies, underseen movies of all time. He is capable of putting in crazy performances. He's able to put in endearing performances. So I'm interested to see where he straddles that line in this movie, because if you know anything, if you watch true crime documentaries, a lot of serial killers are charming dudes. So I think that Domhnall Gleeson could play both sides of the homicidal maniac and the guy that lures his victims in. And then Steve Carell in a dramatic role is always fantastic, in my opinion. So I'm excited for this one. Very, very excited for this one.
Yeah, so that's The Patient coming to Hulu this Tuesday. Something that we have talked about a decent deal as the trailers rolled out for it. We have The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power coming to Prime Video on Wednesday.
Oh, sorry.
Wrong one.
Wrong show. Wrong fantasy show.
So this is based on the Lord of the Rings novel as well as its appendices and developed by J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. It's set in the Second Age of Middle-earth, thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I talked about this on the show when the first trailer aired during the Super Bowl.
We've talked about it maybe 3 times. We just talked about it when we did our San Diego Comic-Con coverage.
That's right. So I'll be brief here. The first trailer for this show, I wasn't convinced on. The second one, I was like, this thing looks like it could be the real deal. And I missed my chance. I set a reminder on my phone to see the theatrical version of the first 2 episodes of this, which they did in very limited. It's by the time this releases, they're all going to be sold out, I'm sure, unfortunately. But they are screening the first 2 episodes of this, which is definitely a good sign for the quality of this show. I think if they have that much faith in it, and considering the budget and the amount they paid for the rights, let's hope they have faith in it.
They have a lot of faith that they spent a considerable
$500 million.
Yeah, the most money that's ever been spent on a television show.
The testicle part of that dude's rocket, of Jeff Bezos's rocket, that amount of money, it's like right there.
Oh no. Brad, are you a Lord of the Rings fan? Is this something that you've been eagerly awaiting? Have you read the books? I have not. I've never been able to get through them. Personally.
Oh man. Massive fan of the books, massive fan of the film series. Not a big fan of the Hobbit adaptation. It should have been 1 movie, maybe 2 movies, in my opinion. Not a big fan of all the stuff that Peter Jackson added to that story because I thought that those were the weakest elements of those movies. But the original trilogy, on the other hand, one of my favorites of all time. So I'm tentatively excited for this series. Because that first trailer, like you were saying, didn't really have me sold. But the more stuff that's come out for it, the more I've been sold on it. And then the early reactions from critics came out just the other day, and every one of them, whether they like the show or not, calls out the production value and how incredible it is and the sets for this show. So if anything, I'm excited to see some gorgeous landscapes and gorgeous architecture and all of that. So at least we know that we'll be in good hands in that respect.
For sure.
I don't know how people aren't going to get fatigued though. Like this is the same kind of audience that would be into Game of Thrones. And I'm looking at this show and I kind of want to check it out, but we'll talk about Game of Thrones a little bit later and what we've been consuming. But yeah, I try to imagine watching both of these shows at the same time. Sounds like not something I want to do.
It's a lot of fantasy, different types of fantasy.
Certainly.
But
for your average viewer, it feels like one must be there to rule them all. You know, it doesn't feel like both these are going to come out ahead, but we'll see.
So yeah, that's The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. That'll be premiering on Prime Video this Wednesday. Also coming out this Wednesday to AMC Plus, we are sticking in the sci-fi lane with news this week. We have Pantheon. This is a sci-fi animated series by author, based on a collection of short stories by author Ken Liu, and is centered on a bullied teen who receives mysterious help from someone online, a stranger soon revealed to be her recently deceased father, or he claims to be. This story seems to be about uploading human consciousness into the computer. Stuff that has been played.
Singularity, Brian.
We have covered things. Yes, the singularity, as
Ray Kurzweil.
I'm blank on his name. Ray Kurzweil has.
Ray Kurzweil. That was on the top of my head too.
Speaking of Ray Kurzweil, someone who had a lot of his thinking comes from the loss of his father in trying to potentially recreate him. So very much a good shout out there, Chris. This trailer looks great. Something that maybe these concepts have been done before, but in today's day and age, we're at a place with technology where this stuff is getting seemingly so close that these are still ripe for fun content, I think. We also have a solid cast here. We have Daniel Day Kim, Katie Chang, Paul Dano, Rosemary DeWitt, Aaron Eckhart, Ron Livingston, Taylor Schilling, Raza Joffrey, and William Hurt, and many more.
Brian, would you say that it's a stacked cast?
Absolutely.
A stacked cast?
Would you say that it is an incredible pantheon of actors?
Oh.
Oh my. Yes. Yes, I would.
Would you say this is going to bust blocks?
Probably not, considering it's a streaming show.
It's been good. But so yeah, that's Pantheon. It's coming to AMC Plus this Wednesday. Moving into some movies that are coming out this week. We have Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, which is coming to theaters and Peacock on day and date this Friday.
Terrible idea.
The simultaneous release.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, all those Peacock subscribers. I think they reported that they had no growth, like less than a year into. They were like, we don't have any more subscribers. So I don't think anybody will get distracted. But I think this should be everywhere. But to your point, Chris, typically bad idea.
We'll see how it plays out. I think this movie, the trailer looks solid. Again, not a tonally looks like a different movie, but we just saw The Eyes of Tammy Faye last year, which I think was kind of underseen and underappreciated a bit. It wasn't in my top 10 for the year, but I thought the performances and the story, which I was relatively unfamiliar with, were actually pretty compelling and worthwhile. Home for Jesus, Save Your Soul. Like I said, this is more of a comedy than that movie is very much a drama. It's a feature directorial debut from Adana Ebo, written and directed by them, and is based on the short of the same name from 2018 that they also created. It stars Regina Hall and Sterling K. Brown. Easy star-studding performance here. And Daniel Kaluuya is involved in the production under his 59 Cent Productions banner, as well as Jordan Peele executive producing under Monkey Paw Productions. We have all the right ingredients here for this to work. It's a satirical comedy starring Regina Hall as Trinity Childs, the proud first lady of a Southern Baptist megachurch, who together with her husband, Pastor Lee Curtis Childs, played by Sterling K. Brown, once served congregations in the tens of thousands. But after being forced out by scandal, they're trying to make a comeback, baby. And will they, won't they? Who knows? But it is going to be a fun and funny look at megachurches, which we're not going to get into all of that today, but there's plenty to dive into there in terms of satire and corruption and other things. So as relevant as it's ever been, that is Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. Brad, had you heard about this movie? This is one that kind of snuck up on me. I had not seen really advertised until the last probably few weeks.
Yeah, they really didn't market it much. I found it on Sterling K. Brown's like upcoming on his IMDb a little while ago, and I was like, "That's an interesting title." Like that caught my eye. Right. And then knowing that Regina Hall is in it, she is so great, so great in everything that she's in. So I'm excited to see that. I think this whole day and date release on Peacock is a really desperate plea for people to sign up for Peacock, especially they just announced that Halloween Ends is going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's,
I didn't hear that. Wow.
Yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis did a video as Laurie, explaining the release of it. I don't know why they did that as the announcement for it, but it's they're doing the exact same thing, day and date on Peacock. So I guess this is their release strategy right now. And I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that because it takes away from the theatrical audience. And I think that's the way that these filmmakers wanted their movies to be seen. So I would rather see it that way personally. But yeah, I mean, if you want to watch it on Peacock, I guess sign up for Peacock, as you probably don't have a subscription already.
Yeah, apparently no one does.
Yeah.
Would you guys say that Halloween Ends is going to kill its box office revenue?
Oh my God.
Probably. I'd say that.
I will say, in terms of the day and date, I think it affects certain movies more than others. I think there have been a handful of movies that, and maybe it's more in like the horror, like in the genre space, that can do well in both and that people have been showing out for. But generally, I do agree with you. In something like a comedy, the word of mouth that comes from a good comedy and gets people out to the theaters is not going to be replicated on streaming for sure. So I think that's a solid point.
I'm excited for this. I saw a trailer. I did see a trailer because it was before a movie. We had a review for the podcast. So I caught a rare trailer. And
that was probably where I first saw it too.
It looked very funny. And I said, Sterling K. Brown, you mean Traeger from The Predator? That's where I most
Christian.
know him from.
Why?
And I think most audiences would go Traeger from the Predator, Shane Black's masterpiece.
Yeah.
Or from This Is Us.
Yeah.
Or from Black Panther. Or from like any of his other work.
No. Everybody in the theater and
From the
everybody who's looking
Predator.
sign said Traeger, the FBI agent, secret agent from the Predator. No, it's Predator month. They got to throw in that there. We're not covering the Predator officially, but we covered
Thank God.
most of the other movies. No, I love This Is Us. I'm a secret fan. I don't watch it intentionally, but my fiance loves it, and I watch intermittently, and I cry every episode I watch. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to weep. I guess I will weep. And
My wife and I had to stop watching that show solely because we were tired of crying every episode.
it just makes you
Completely
cry.
dehydrated.
You'll be 80% through This Is Us, and you'll be like, this one's not getting me. This one's funny. It's like a light episode, and then the cello starts.
Then all of a
playing,
sudden it's like, Dad's dead.
Slow piano, and then you're like, I do love my family, and it's weird because I don't. So it's really weird how it can tap into your like emotions, in that kind of fun way. But Sterling K. Brown certainly is quite the powerhouse in that show, and really elevates the material and makes me feel things, which I appreciate. So, honk for Jesus. Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, that's Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul. That'll be in theaters and on Peacock this Friday. Lastly, we have McEnroe. So this debuted in the UK prior to being released in the US, but is coming out this Friday on Showtime. So this is a documentary where John McEnroe, acclaimed tennis phenomenon, finally tells his side of the story of his storied career and performances on the court. We hear from McEnroe himself here. I know there have been a handful of other documentaries made about him, as well as a project with Shia LaBeouf that was kind of like a biopic or a retelling of a portion of his life, at least. But it sounds like this is one of the first projects that he's been heavily involved in terms of the documentary side of things. Personally, growing up in the era that I did, I learned about John McEnroe from Adam Sandler movies and his cameos. He kind of became he was a pop culture kind of person that I just knew of. Oh, this is the guy from Mr. Deeds who goes on crazy outbursts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was never a huge tennis fan, but always knew of him for his reputation in the public eye. Having watched this trailer, seeing he truly is kind of one of the sports greats of all time, this seems like a really interesting story, and I've heard good things about it. Getting it from his perspective as well, and the people close to him, seems like a pretty interesting one. Brad, are you a tennis fan at all? Do you know John McEnroe? Do you like documentaries?
I love documentaries, not a tennis fan. I became familiar with John McEnroe the exact same way through Mr. Deeds. It was one of those things where after seeing that movie with my dad, he was like, told me all about his infamous career and his outbursts on the tennis court and arguments with refs and everything. So he's got a very interesting story. So I'm excited to see like an official documentary that he's involved in, telling this story, because as not being a sports fan, I am a fan of sports documentaries a lot of the time because they pick the most interesting aspects of sports and focus on that. So yeah, I'm interested in this for sure. I'd have to re-up my Showtime subscription. But it's one of those things. I need to do that because I'm overdue for a season 3 Twin Peaks rewatch. So this might be the thing that pushes me over the line.
Oh, you just sent Showtime Brian over the edge.
A man of my own heart. I love to hear that. Yes, same. Hell yeah.
I'm currently watching all of David Lynch's movies, which I've bought, and liking them less and less as I go through the list.
Oh, man.
No, it's okay. I've only watched what was the one I talked about? Mulholland Drive, and I was like, I don't get it. But you've heard me on this show, so you know that you don't have to respect my opinion.
One of the greatest jump scares of all time is in Mulholland Drive.
Is it? I don't even know. I don't even remember
the Mr. Winkies sequence where the guy is telling the story at the diner, and then the guy.
Oh yeah, because you're like, what movie are we in? And then nothing. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Oh my God. Remind me. I have to go on a tangent on that part because I was like, oh yeah, that is in the movie, and I don't know why it is. But anyway, we're not talking Mulholland Drive. We're talking something totally different. McEnroe, which I thought was. No, I'm not going to make that joke. Go on, Brian. Back to you.
So yeah, that's the documentary McEnroe that'll be on Showtime this Friday. And
Okay, I am going to tell the joke.
All right, here it is.
It's an Always Sunny episode where Mac is very anti-abortion and then gets a girl pregnant and has to figure out, it comes to terms with him accepting abortion very quickly, by the way. Actually, this is the plot to an episode of It's Always Sunny. Now that I'm talking out loud, it's already an episode. Holy shit. But it's not called Maverick. I'll get back to you. Anyway.
It'd be a genius title for it.
Called Mac and Abortion.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I'll get back to you on that. But Brian, thanks for the wacky news. Ending it super wacky. I don't know where the hell we ended up. Whose fault was that?
Roe v. Mac.
Right. All right, let's move on. Oopsies, there it goes. Slide whistle. Let's
deserved.
Let's move on into what we've been consuming with our quick hits. Quick hits is that special part of the show where we talk about what we've been consuming in the world of pop culture. A lot of stuff to get to. We got a special guest, so we're gonna jump right in. Bradley, got a lot on the docket. A couple things that I'm really excited about. We'll start with The Rehearsal, something I mentioned a couple weeks ago, but this is Nathan Fielder's new show on HBO Max, which I believe just got renewed for a second season, which is pretty crazy considering all the cuts. And you'd think if you were Mr. What's his name? No, it's not. It's CEO.
Oh man, I can't remember.
I just had Zaslav. I was like Zelensky, Zimmerman, Zaslav. There we go. Zaslav. Zaslav. I got it. 5 times.
Are you trying to summon demons again?
Yeah.
David Zaslav.
But when you think about shows that you're going to cut the budget, he came through HBO Max and they just acquired by Discovery. So he's like cutting all sorts of shit. And then like he looked at this show where Nathan Fielder's like, I'm kind of having a therapy session and I'm just reconstructing very expensive sets through it. And he's like, sounds good. You were building homes. That's kind of my bread and butter. Keep doing it. So what are your thoughts on The Rehearsal? Are you in love with it as much as I am?
Man, Nathan Fielder is my hero, the king of unintentional cringe comedy. He did a great episode of the A24 podcast with Alexa Demi from Euphoria. And it is one of the most interesting interviews where they interview each other I've ever heard. And he is who he is on the podcast or on the TV show. Like, it's not an act for him. He's unintentionally funny, and I love that in this show. It raises a lot of moral questions about reality TV and especially people who allow their children to enter into show business, and just the kind of shines a light on a really weird part of the industry, in my opinion. So that counteracted with the greatest cringe comedy I've seen on TV in years since Nathan For You went off the air, which is near and dear to my heart. Love that show so much. And I think he topped that show with The Rehearsal personally, just from the places that he was willing to go, not only with the people that he was interacting with, but where he was willing to go himself in a way that I feel like he never has before. But yeah, Nathan Fielder, great guy. He seems like, but yeah, funnily enough, if you listen to the recast episode of The Wizard of Oz, Blake casts the wizard as Nathan Fielder.
Oh my God, that's excellent.
And so it's bringing it all back around synergistically. But yeah, it's Nathan Fielder, absolutely amazing. The Rehearsal, mind blowing. I don't want to give anything away because it needs to be seen to be believed. Honestly,
it is. It reminds me of some of the special kind of season finale episodes, especially near the end of Nathan For You's run, but in a show. He kind of is doing those kind of special one-offs that were like the real like mind fucks of we're layering and layering,
Bill Gates
these
guy
layers of abstraction. Yeah, it's crazy. So, the first half of this season so far is very funny, but I will say I'm still enjoying the show, but it has become much less funny to me personally. Like laugh out loud bits are not happening nearly maybe a couple times an episode now. We are full into this is fundamentally fucked up and creepy. and weird. And it's weird that there's this balance that I think when he's at his best, he is striking. The back half of the season is borderline sociopathic, which is testing even my levels of cringe comedy. And
Have you finished it yet?
I have finished the last episode was the I'll just say the mom and the younger son. There's a lot of stuff happening.
That's the finale of the show.
Oh shit! Yeah,
season 1.
Six episodes. Then six
episodes.
Oh my goodness, I'm kind of sad about that. But it makes sense that it ends where it does. Then this is how much research I do. I'm a podcast host about pop culture. I think the back half, especially those last couple episodes. I mean, they start to become just pure like horrific like chills of like, ugh. You feel like you're wearing somebody's skin the entire time you're watching it. So I will say it is it's a little disturbing, and viewer discretion is advised. But it's nothing like this has existed on TV. Really?
Yeah.
It's oh my god, the constant like, you think of something that breaks the facade, but he already thought of it, and it's later in the show, and they explore it, and you're like, oh, okay, we're here now. It's quite impressive feat. And even if you didn't find it very funny, which I didn't find the last couple episodes, it's worth watching just for the whole, you haven't seen anything like this. So huge recommend for me as well. That's The Rehearsal, streaming on HBO Max right now, renewed for a second season. I'm jealous of this because I'm holding off. I was the Top Gun fanboy before it broke box office records, okay? I was so stoked for it. I learned the theme on guitar and played it on the show. I was hyped, and I was even more hyped after seeing it. Really enjoyed that flick, especially the last third. The last third is a masterpiece. Honestly, I should have just walked in. They should have just played the last third, and we all could go home. But I've been waiting because I just want to get the disc, right? But digitally, it was released this week, and you got a chance to check it out and some special features. What do you think of Top Gun Maverick, digitally released as of this recording?
So Top Gun Maverick, if you go back and listen to the episode that we did of You Gotta See This, it is one of both me and Blake's favorite movies of the whole year. For me, it's probably number 4 behind Everything Everywhere All at Once, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, and RRR. All of those movies, if you haven't seen them, especially RRR on Netflix, go and watch it. But unrelated, this is one of my favorite movies to come out all year. The sheer feat of what they accomplished from a filmmaking standpoint is unbelievable, and this home release is absolutely worth the purchase for the special features that show you how they made this movie. I still have one more special feature to go, and that's actually a 49-minute long masterclass with Tom Cruise about making this movie.
That's awesome.
So that alone is the biggest selling point for me, is that it's got one of those on there. But yeah, they talk.
Sorry to interrupt, Brad. Is it like legitimately a masterclass?
That's what it says. It's him in front of an audience.
That's pretty cool.
It's 49 minutes long.
Hi, I'm Tom Cruise, and I'm going to teach you how to ignore liability insurance.
But yeah, it's great, man. They talk about the way they filmed the movie, the way they had to like set up the camera in the cockpit and teach the actors not only how to withstand the G's, but how to set up the frame, how to kind of self-edit. They had to learn how to make the movie along with all of these crazy things. There's a whole special feature about the training they had to undergo before they were even allowed to sit in the cockpit of one of these jets.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable the lengths that they went to. There's a guy that works in the Navy. He was like, I thought for sure one of these people would tap out and they would have to recast them, but all of them stayed through it. And
now, did you watch a lot of the special features leading up? Because I mean, that was something. As soon as I saw the movie, I'd seen a little bit before, and I was like, no, I don't want to spoil much of it. And then dive deep. There's so much out there in the internet, and you'd say there's even more here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just these are like the officially produced, I guess, for the home release special features that they hadn't released before. There's one about the Dark Star, is what they codenamed that experimental aircraft in the opening sequence of the movie, and how they came up with the design for that with Lockheed Martin, the people who designed the most top secret aircrafts, how they were able to get access to filming locations that have never been seen by anyone outside of top clearance military before. It's insane the links that they went to for this movie. And if you're a fan of filmmaking documentaries, these are all short, like 7 to 10 minute long special features. So nice little bite size, just packed with information and really interesting things though. So if you liked this movie, get it on home release, whether you get it now on digital or in November when it comes out on Blu-ray. It's 100% worth the watch for those special features.
Now, would you say when you're equating what's worth watching, the movie, or maybe what if someone just watched a fan theory video on the fact that Tom Cruise is dead throughout the whole thing? Which would you watch first? Would you see the movie, or
Brad,
would you?
I feel
Brad
like there's
might
a
already
story
be privy.
here.
He might already be privy to this because his brother and I had a long conversation about this movie in our group chat, during which we talked about this exact thing and how you personally think that I'm crazy for wanting to consume everything about the making of this film and the fan theories, and yet I will not go see the movie in theaters.
Yeah, I can't believe it's the theatrical movie of the year in my opinion.
I know, dude.
Yeah.
I know. And there's something within me. I don't know if it's just like rebelling against what everyone else is enjoying, but there's something within me that just will not let me go see this movie in theaters. It's made enough money in theaters, but my wife really wants to see this movie, and now that it's out on digital, I'm gonna see it probably within the next 2 weeks. So I will finally see Top Gun Maverick. But I am super excited to consume those special features, probably more so than watching the actual film.
Crank the sounds as far up as you possibly can without disturbing anyone.
Always a good call. Does this, we talk a lot about physical releases, as we've said. Does this have a director's commentary on it?
It did not have it listed in the special features.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish.
Bummer.
Kaczynski is all over the making of stuff though, so it's you do get to hear a lot from him, but yeah, no director's commentary, unfortunately.
They're rare these days.
I still need to listen to the one for Everything Everywhere All at Once on the Blu-ray release that the Daniels did. But yeah, that's one that I bought on digital the day it came out, and then I bought on physical release so that I could get that commentary specifically.
Double dipped. That's dedication.
I mean, I have a tattoo scheduled tomorrow in honor of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah, very excited
awesome.
about that movie.
I had a chance to check out that commentary, but it was really annoying because it was all crew members talking about everything all at once, and you can't make heads or tails of the whole thing. Anyway, that's Top Gun Maverick, available on digital. Bradley, closing out your list, or as I call you, closing out your list, Deathrattle, Sing For Me by Norma Jean, the new album. Norma Jean, little hard. Going a little hard with the Norma Jean.
Yes, if you're a fan of metal music or hardcore music at all, they're one of the bands that endured from middle school for me. There's maybe, I can count on one hand the metal bands and hardcore bands I'm still into, and Norma Jean is forever and always one of those bands because I feel like they're constantly innovating, doing new things with their sound, working with new producers that push them to new limits. But yeah, this album is no exception. Specifically, there is a song towards the end of the album. I believe it's called A Killing Word. And it is one of the heaviest songs they've ever released, but it starts out very slow and builds up to one of the greatest breakdowns they've ever had in one of their songs, in my opinion. So if you're a fan of metal music at all, a fan of hardcore music, this is, in my opinion, the album of the year in that genre.
Wow, high praise. You know, so many bands did not survive the scene phase because it was sort of a toxic community. But Norma Jean did it right. Instead of wearing skinny jeans, they wore normal jeans.
Oh boy.
Normal jeans. Anyway,
Where's that sliding whistle?
that is not on the soundboard that I pulled up right now, so I'm not going to do it. That is Deathrattle by Deathrattle Sing for Me by Norma Jean. I'm excited to check this out. Never been into this super. I think Every Time I Die is maybe the hardest I've ever gone, and they're like...
Love them. Yeah. R.I.P.
Yeah. Hey, Pigs is Pigs is one of my... I love that song. I love that song so much. I don't love the band, but I do love that song. So I do.
Gotcha.
I dabble. So maybe I should check this out.
It's great.
Very cool. Chris, reporting live. I'm sorry I couldn't make this one with you, bud. I know we saw the Broly one. You saw the new Dragon Ball Z movie, all a buzz at my office. So, people really excited. It sounded like it was getting good reception. Dragon Ball Super, Superhero. Was it super good?
Gentlemen, first and foremost, this is the new Dragon Ball movie directed by Tetsuro Kodama with a screenplay by original Dragon Ball author Akira Toriyama. IMDb, the summary says, the Red Ribbon Army from Goku's past has returned with 2 new androids to challenge him and his friends. I was concerned going into this movie. I'm a lifelong Dragon Ball fan, as listeners to the podcast will know. However, unlike the Broly movie, which came out in 2019, had beautiful 2D hand-drawn animation, they decided to turn head here and make it a completely CG 3D animated film with cell shading. So it wasn't like a Pixar movie. They still had the cell shading. But when I first heard about that, I was like, oh no, this is going to look terrible. On top of that, a couple of the new forms for some of the characters were released prior to the movie coming out. Toei does very weird marketing when it comes to their films, and they typically spoil everything before the movie's ever released in theaters in Japan. And those also had me very concerned about the movie, because it almost seemed as though, while originally being an action comedy manga, it seemed as though Dragon Ball had finally become a parody of itself. I fucking love this movie. Within the context of the story, this movie is so much fun. And there's so few pieces of media that are able to transport you back to a certain period of time. And I have to say, watching this movie in IMAX, Danny Lopez, friend of the show, our Godzilla guru, came with me, loves Dragon Ball as well. I was transported to being a 14-year-old again. It has such an excellent mix of Akira Toriyama's comedic stylings as well as the Dragon Ball Z action beats. And it's not about Goku and Vegeta. Dragon Ball has had such a problem over the last decade with basically being like the Goku and Vegeta show. For those that know the show, those are the 2 main characters. And Dragon Ball Superhero instead decided to make one of the side characters the main character of the film. So this is mostly a Piccolo movie with Gohan, Goku's son, as, I would say, the second lead. Brad, I don't know if any of these words are making any sense to you.
Yeah, I've probably seen maybe like 50 to 60 episodes of the shows
so like
over the
5%.
years.
Okay.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Very, very little. My best friend Dale is very well versed in it, though. So through osmosis, I've learned a lot from it. Unfortunately, saw the movie that will not be spoken of, I'm sure, on any self-respecting podcast dedicated to movies. Dragon Ball Evolution doesn't exist.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Did see that in theaters, unfortunately. But I've very, very on the outside familiarity with it, but enough to know exactly what you're talking about so far. So
that's excellent. I know Christian's a big fan of the series, or has been in the past. Brian also, too, similarly to you, has a basic understanding of like what Dragon Ball Z is. But it was just so refreshing to have a movie that did not focus on Goku or Vegeta. I didn't know how much I wanted a story that was completely without them. A lot of fans of the series love Gohan as a character because, being children of the 90s, we kind of grew up during a time where that character was at his most powerful within the series. I know Christian is a big fan of that character. Christian, when we saw Broly and we got out of the theater, you said, and I quote,
"Damn,
I don't want to see any more Dragon Ball movies with you."
Sorry. Yes, that too.
So that is why I did not invite you to see this movie. But sitting down in the theater, I have to say I did feel a little sad, considering I knew that you were kind of tired of the formula, and this kind of turned the formula on its head for the most part. So I'm excited for you to see this, hopefully sometime in the future, because it really did bring the character of Gohan kind of back to his prominence, and I think gave a lot of fans exactly what they were looking for. I will say, if I'm putting my critic hat on here for a minute, taking off the fanboy emotional hat,
The movie sucks. It's garbage.
there's an extensive 10-minute like exposition dump at the beginning of the movie that is a little long-winded. I think it could have been shortened a bit, but the benefit to the exposition dump is it doesn't have to do with any of the main characters. It's our new villains of the movie kind of talking to one another and laying out their plan. And as they're doing that, they're utilizing the new 3D animation to kind of move the camera around the car that they're traveling in, kind of getting the audience used to this new animation style. So by the time we actually hit the main characters, your eyes have adjusted. You're like, okay, I'm in this. Like, this is the style of the movie. Here we go. So there is a benefit to it, but I definitely think they could have trimmed it down. This movie made $21 million in its opening weekend. It was the highest grossing film the weekend it came out. It beat Idris Elba's Beast at the box office, which is insane to me. But I think
Look at this guy being happy about movies making a lot of money in IMAX over here.
Interesting.
Wow. Very interesting.
But it's just a cartoon. I could have just watched it on a streaming service. It's just a cartoon. Why would I?
Yeah, it's just a cartoon. You know, it doesn't have any like insane visuals. Seeing this in IMAX was absolutely amazing. The audio mix was booming. No, Brian, it's justified considering what I just said about Top Gun Maverick.
I'm happy to see this movie doing well as well, though.
Me too. I think it speaks to a portion of moviegoers that just aren't being serviced to currently. You know, anime has progressively done very well in the West over the last couple years. The Demon Slayer movie did exceptionally well, as did the last Dragon Ball Super movie, Broly. So I'm hoping that even though it didn't like smash numbers, being first for the weekend that it came out, I'm hoping that Hollywood looks at this and they say there is kind of a demand for this content, and we start to see more of these things in the West. Not just these giant franchises, but even smaller pictures. Brian just saw Inuo in theaters. I would love to see more kind of independent anime films come over to the West and get theatrical releases. But
you heard it here first. Chris says Dragon Ball Evolution 2. Put it in the works.
No, please no.
I think we can get Chadwick.
Doesn't Warner Brothers didn't they announce a Lord of the Rings anime film is being released theatrically? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited about that a major studio is going to theatrically release an anime film. So maybe that'll usher in more of this whenever that comes out next year.
Hopefully.
Chris, two questions.
Yeah.
Sorry if I could interject. The animation, does it look like that Dragon Ball Z Fighters game? Like, because you kind of described how that's interesting. Because that seems like would be the go-to way to do it. Because that's 3D but looks like a flat cartoon.
The way they utilize the animation, there are some sequences that are a little clunky. But I would say for the most part, choosing to animate the film in this way gave them a more robust way to like express fight sequences. They can take a digital camera and move it around characters in ways that you just can't do, or at least is very work intensive to do in 2D animation. So for the most part, I would say for like 95% of the movie, the new animation style is working really, really well. It only a couple times you're looking at it and you're like, this kind of looks like a video game. But for the most part, it's great. You lose yourself in it once the story kicks off.
And when it comes to story, before we close, I know we're running super long, but I want to get to everything else on the docket, and I have to ask this question. The story, I don't know much about the story. I barely watched the trailer for this, but the story sounds like a Gohan retcon. Is that essentially what it is?
It's not.
No? Okay, that's good to hear, because that's what the story sounds like. Because, as we all know, all true Dragon Ball Z fans know, the actual story ends at the Cell Saga. Okay?
It does. It was originally supposed to.
Everything after it is fan fiction, written by the guy who created it. So, the fact that they... because Gohan becomes a very inconsequential character.
He does.
98% of the rest of the show. So, this is justice for Gohan. It's exciting. All right, that's Dragon Ball Super, Superheroes, Super Now, shot on Super 8, super ready for you to super watch it in theaters. Brian. Oh, no, we'll circle back. We'll end with that one. Brian,
we'll end with this other one, yeah.
Brian, you saw Bodies, starring the guy who's high all the time.
Pete Davidson.
Pete Davidson, yeah.
Yes. This is how I know actors. I'm a podcast host for Pop Culture. Brian, you saw Bodies, A24 flick. What'd you think?
I thought this movie was great. It was advertised as maybe more of a horror movie than it ultimately is. It's very much safely in kind of the thriller, murder, mystery, comedy space. And it does some really fun things to kind of subvert some of the normal tropes you'd see in a movie like this, and has a lot of really fun twists and turns. This movie lives and dies off the ensemble cast, and I think everyone is great here. A lot of people you may have not seen before. Some people, Maria Bakalova, who was in Borat's subsequent movie film, as well as Rachel Sennett, who was in Shiva Baby, which was an incredible movie. She's also great in this. But you also have people like Amanda Stenberg, who is one of the main leads, who, if you're on Twitter, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the discourse around her DMing a critic that has been just an absolute mess, and went as you would expect on Twitter.
You mean like really good discourse and people understood each
all
other?
All positive, no one upset.
Yeah, nobody had any objections to it.
Absolutely zero misogyny happening on Twitter.
Both of their careers are now blossoming because of the interaction, something like that.
Amazing.
We have Lee Pace playing a character 20 years older than everyone else here that just is used incredibly well throughout the course of this movie. I don't want to say too much about this because I think it's just the kind of movie you want to hop in and be on the ride for. Maria Bakalova is kind of our entry point as the viewer into the lifestyle of the rest of these characters. She has recently gotten into a relationship with kind of our secondary lead in the ensemble cast here. And she's introduced to her friend group, who we find she's kind of been estranged from a period of time. And we figure out why that is throughout the course of the movie. These are a bunch of wealthy, rich 20-somethings who can't communicate with each other particularly well, or have a lot bubbling under the surface that is unspoken until it's not unspoken, that is driving a lot of the conflict in this movie. And I think that's where this movie is working. It's kind of a cringe comedy. Like, there are times when these characters are really mean to each other. And I don't know. I feel like it's, because of where it ends, I think it feels like a fresh take on this sort of genre, even though there's a lot of stuff that you may have seen before here.
You know, it's interesting they say that like the marketing was off, because you were like, oh, it's like a horror movie. I was like, hey, or you said it was like, oh, it's a comedy. And I was like, it didn't seem that funny, you know, from the trailers. So I think it's a good shout.
It's really funny throughout the whole movie, I would say.
Yeah.
My theater was laughing out loud multiple times through this movie. Like it was such a hit with the crowd that I saw it with.
Bradley, that's a subtle way to remind me that you also saw this. So I'm going to transition to your thoughts on Bodies.
Yeah, I'll just touch on it briefly, because in our most recent episode of You've Got to See This, we go like super deep in on it. But this is both me and my co-host Blake. It's one of our favorite movies of the year. It is so much fun. It's so like such a biting satire on Gen Z, and in such a way where it's not like it's made by Gen Zers too, is the thing. Like that's what's it's this self-satire that's wrapped up in a thriller, murder, mystery, horror. And it's got just twists and turns, like he was saying, like where you think you've got it figured out, and then something happens and you're like, well, I'm a dumbass. And it just keeps happening over and over again until the last little section, the last reveal of the movie. And
perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah. It had me in stitches. It was great. Rachel Sennett specifically as the character Alice was the standout of this movie for me. Just everything that came out of her mouth was perfect cringe comedy.
She has a podcast as well.
Yes.
Relatable.
And Lee Pace, giving such a scene stealing performance in this movie too. The whole cast just fantastic. I'm a huge champion of Amanda Stenberg. I think that she is incredible, has an amazing career ahead of her. She's going to be the lead in the Star Wars series, The Acolyte, that's coming to Disney Plus, and I can't wait to see her in what is presumably a Sith in the training, possibly, if that's what this show is following. But yeah, I love this movie. Can't recommend it enough. Laugh out loud, hilarious, keeps you guessing the whole time. Fantastic. A24 is on a roll this year.
Seriously.
I hear if you join their fan club, you can get a pin and a pretty good coupe on your birthday.
I just got mine in the mail, actually.
But make sure you do it during your birthday month, according to a source that we have.
Sources.
Hot pro tips.
Maybe you should all sign up for AAA24 the month of your birthday and get a free birthday gift from them, which I have coming up this weekend, and I can't wait for.
It's very exciting. We might, the Pop-O-Holics bump.
Happy early birthday.
You're going to see what we call the Pop-O-Holics bump on your two podcasts. I mean, it's a little bump that we give you.
I think Christian did the Pop-O-Holics bump in between the break there.
But I think the bump is going to shut down this whole A24 special thing. Yeah. So that's Bodies. Very cool that you both saw it. I'm interested in seeing it. More excited now that I've heard from y'all. But let's jump into what we really came for, what you've been consuming. No, we're almost 2.5 hours into this recording. Why wouldn't we talk about a super long show that is going to exist for presumably the next 8 years of our lives? Gentlemen and ladies that are listening, especially the ladies. Yes. So glad you're fans, as well as the men. Men, I'm looking at you. Especially you, Brian. You're the cute one. Anyway, everybody's been waiting for this.
And the single
show.
one.
And the hot potato. That's what people do with hot people, right? I don't know. I've been in a relationship for half a decade,
for too long.
Yeah. No idea what dating would look like. People go, right? That's what people do. Brian,
totally.
You'd know.
Oh yeah, that's the hip thing to do at the bars.
Brian
Everybody's doing the Conan.
He's always, but speaking of softcore pornography, everybody was so excited about the recent next generation, or technically previous generation because it's a prequel, but the next stage of HBO Max's biggest hit ever, Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, House of Dragoons. Premiered. What's the proper title? It's Super Game of Thrones, Super House of Dragons, I believe. No,
according to Brian, it's Game of Thrones, Throne Games.
Throne of Thrones. Well, do you like swords in your throne? We got more. Somehow there's more in the prequel. So anyway, Game of Thrones.
Mostly because George R.R. Martin was not happy with the production design of the throne in the original series.
There's got to be more swords.
There was in the book, apparently.
So Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon premiered. Chris, I'm going to start with you, bud. Everybody here, I think, a little disappointed with the last part of the Game of Thrones stuff. We won't dive too much into that. We've shared our thoughts before. I think we agree with everybody listening right now about the trajectory of that previous show. So knowing all that, us feeling the same way. Chris, how did you feel watching this episode?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. The episode's directed by Miguel Sapochnik. It's written by Ryan Condal, both of whom are show running the entire series. So it's fitting that they're both involved with this first episode. And it feels good to be back in Westeros, boys. That's all I have to say. I think the first episode has done an excellent job of setting up the core conflict of what the rest of the series is going to be about. Within the episode, we have several sequences of just like possibly some of the most brutal things that I've seen over the course of the series, one of which had me particularly squirming in my seat, and all I have to say is thank God for modern medicine. But yeah, it had all the trappings of what audiences love about Game of Thrones. The CG was on point with all the dragons. All the performances, I think, are very good within the episode. So Brad, when we first talked to him about being a guest on the show, asked us if we were excited about the upcoming House of Dragon series. And I myself said I'm probably not going to watch it the night that it airs, which is a good thing I didn't, because the HBO Max servers ended up crashing during its premiere, which I think speaks volumes to how popular Game of Thrones still is despite that last season.
I believe the correct verbiage is their servers were set on fire.
By dragons? Dracarys.
Dracarys, baby.
Someone at HBO Max said Dracarys, and the servers went up in flames.
His name was David Zaslav. The greatest dragon that ever reigned over Westeros.
I said I was going to get to it, and I did. And my hype levels are so high after that first episode. Like I said, it's exciting to be back in Westeros. I can't wait to see what the rest of the series has to offer. Gentlemen, what were your opinions of the first episode of the House of the Dragon? Let's get the
before we move
title
on
correct
into
here.
Bradley's thoughts. I just want to say, I think I was right. I think I said this in our. We had met Bradley a little bit before we recorded, and I was like, what do you think they're going to do with the theme? And you're like, oh, they're going to make a whole new theme. I was like, I don't think they will.
Little sprinkle that original theme.
The entire structure of the theme is guiding 90% of the episode. It is. Yeah. It's like dun 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 dun. Like literally, only notes that are in that cadence. And they'll take a left at the very end. They'll take a left at the house. They don't go in the house. They go to the House of the Dragon, which the dragon apparently is like a quarter note above the regular fucking house. But yeah, that's playing throughout the entire.
This episode didn't have an intro sequence, but we are going to get an intro sequence in episode 2, and I'm very excited to see what the official theme of this show sounds like and how much of that original theme they actually use, because it was certainly present in the score of this episode, like you were saying, Christian.
The jury's still out on what the theme of the show, if the theme of the show will be very similar, if not the same as Game of Thrones.
Game, it's a game.
Indeed. I bet it's going to be a metal song from Norma Jean.
That'd be sick.
I'd be happy with that.
Bradley, what'd you think of the first episode of House of the Dragon?
Man, they won me back. They really did with this episode. I think specifically under the guidance of Miguel Sapochnik, where he is the king of this world. I think that even more than Benioff and Weiss were for the original series, he had the best episodes of the show, the best directed episodes of the show, in my opinion. So knowing that he's the showrunner for this has me so excited for the rest of this show to see what direction it goes in. My understanding is we're going to be dealing with a time jump here.
We are.
Because there are multiple actors playing the lead roles. I cannot wait for the next episode for Olivia Cooke to be introduced because she is one of my favorite actors working today. I think she's amazing. If you haven't seen McEnroe and the Dying Girl, that movie is fantastic. She is incredible in it. But yeah, most people would know her from Ready Player One. But right. Yeah, she is a very, very talented person. I've loved her ever since seeing her in Bates Motel back in the day. But yeah, I can't wait to see the direction that this show goes. I can't wait to see what stories we hear from these characters. Everyone was so intriguing in it. Paddy Considine is incredible in this pilot. I hope that he's throughout this show because he is incredible. Very versatile actor. He's great in the Edgar Wright movies. He is specifically Hot Fuzz. I love him in. But yeah, it's cool to see him playing a character like this in the fantasy world. And yeah, I'm super excited. They won me back somehow after breaking my heart last season. I'm all in again.
I will say, there was a moment in the episode that takes place at night. And I was watching on my OLED TV, and I was specifically watching to see if anything in the sequence was like just unwatchable based on that one episode we got in season 8. It has to be HBO Max's streaming service, because during that sequence I was like, some of this is hard to see. I don't know if you guys had that experience, but hopefully they end up looking at that and fixing that a little bit more.
Yeah,
Christian, you watched it on the same TV, didn't you?
It wasn't as bad as Battle of the Bastards. That was because of the servers and everybody watched that the same. Like that was particularly just a puddle. It looked like we were watching the whole thing through a puddle. This was within what I would consider specifications for a streaming platform. It didn't look as good, of course, as a locally sourced copy, but it was, I would say, fine. Yeah, okay. So my thoughts. I'm going to be a little bit more nitpicky. But this is like a very emotional journey that I'm sure some of this happened to you both, which is, have you ever been, do you ever remember in school, like you went to another school, maybe you're visiting or something, and then you look at all the people and you're like, everybody seems like I should recognize them, but they all seem like bizarro versions of people I should recognize. And that's how I felt just like starting the show is everybody seemed like, oh, you belong in Game of Thrones, but I have no idea who the fuck you are. And it just like it takes you a second to just settle in with like, everybody looks like they're wearing wigs and like no one looks like themselves. It's crazy.
I completely didn't recognize Rhys Ifans in the movie or in the episode. I had to go after the fact and look at the cast and be like, I saw him in the credits and I was like, what? Who did he play?
Yeah, he came up when his character popped up. I said that I asked Blake, I was like, is Rhys Ifans in this show?
And he is
Rhys Ifans? And then it took a couple of scenes to go through and I was like, holy shit, that is him. I love him.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Smith looks like he's cosplaying as Legolas. It's pretty great all around. Matt Smith looks weird as fuck. But
his character is great in the show, though.
That armor.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
The show's very expensive. There's part of me that while I was watching it, I was kind of like, you know, I remember early Game of Thrones, and they're like, we can afford about 5 seconds of CG. So they'd be like, King's Landing, okay, you know, and then they would be in the set, and it was very intimate. And there was a lack of intimacy that I think, especially the later parts of Game of Thrones, and I think this one, because they're having to serve multiple masters here, because they're like, we have a big budget, we want it to be big, but I think some of the worst shots are like CG landscapes that are on the screen for way too long. It's like they don't look terrible, but it's like sometimes they're like, oh, what if we show there's particularly a shot of young, I'm just going to call her, she looks like the young Targaryen chick, but she's not. She's a different one, but she looks very similar, obviously, because they're similar, like, people.
Is it Rhaenyra? Is that her name?
Rhaenyra is like walking along a path, and they cut to a wide shot where it's like, and look at the ocean in the background, and the ships coming in, and all. And it was like, but the moment was a really small, intimate, and so parts of that, I'm like, I'm getting distracted by some of the budget stuff. All very small nitpicks. Overall, amazing pilot episode. Definitely, I don't know if it's not as good as the original Game of Thrones pilot, but that's like a perfect pilot. And there's a lot more going on. And then there's no incest in this episode, so it's like, come on, what's going on?
Wait for that, my friend.
Far.
Yeah, but
we'll get there.
But spoiler alert for Game of Thrones season 1. Episode 1. There's incest, and during the incest, a child fractures his spine by falling out of a tree. I mean, come on,
from a tower.
It's pretty great. It's but then this episode was.
Don't worry, you'll get the incest that you desire.
We'll bash all the heads in and see them splatter. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, Game of Thrones. And then there's like gratuitous fucking that's happening all the time. But I was like,
it's HBO.
I was like, why isn't anybody related? Anyway,
everyone's related, bro.
It's true. Those Targaryens, they look too similar.
I will say, because the series takes place about 172 years before the original Game of Thrones series, I did do a little bit of a deep dive into family trees after the episode, and holy God, there are so many Targaryen kings prior to us even getting to the Mad King, who's like kind of the catalyst for everything in the original series. It's insane.
That line looks crazy. Like a redwood. It's all straight up.
Just every Targaryen fucking one another.
See, that's what I came to Game of Thrones for. No, it's a really.
How do you think their hair stays so white, dude?
Yeah, purebreds. Why
do you think the last Targaryen on the throne is a fucking insane person?
Yeah, drives you mad. So it's very solid. That's what I'll say. And it's particularly, I gotta say, gentlemen, I won't spoil what happens in the episode. But there's a scene that's quite horrific towards the end, like that broke my heart, made me feel all sorts of things, and also some misdirects. There's some Game of Thronesy things that I thought were gonna happen, and then they didn't. So they're having fun with the narrative. I like it a lot. That's Game of Thrones, House of Dragon. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the next episode. Game of Thrones is back. was kind of like wanting to do my crack open the door and go, it's back, it's back, and I'm like, oh, but what if you break my heart? What if my heart's broken again? I don't know if I can take it.
Have we cautious embrace?
Have we gotten any dragon personalities?
No, these dragons seem very. Okay, no, that's not true. There's two dragons.
They're animals.
There's two dragons.
We talked about this,
and
right?
they have very different personalities. But I wouldn't say we haven't met the sassy dragon yet.
Okay.
We did meet the angry dragon, marked by the fact
WB Discovery's Real House of Dragons. That's the joke we made a couple weeks ago. I'm still waiting for the slutty dragon.
Slutty dragons could be cool.
The Samantha of the group.
That dragon's a Samantha.
But yeah, it seems cool. Against my better judgment, I did catch like a minute and a half of the here's what's coming. Like, don't worry, they're like, we have a plan, and like, look at all the places we're gonna go. And I watched some of that.
You got to watch the inside the episode after each episode.
I'm good. They were like, watch our companion podcast. I was like, I'm never gonna listen to your companion podcast. That's never gonna be a thing I do. Like a sponsored podcast you guys put out.
Dave Chen has Cast of Kings. I have to say, it's an excellent podcast.
Not a sponsor. Again, not a sponsored.
Not a sponsored podcast, but they've been doing that podcast since the beginning, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, great. Shout out other people's podcasts. That's what we want to do.
Yeah, that's what we're here to do.
Could be listening to us for the next months, but no, don't. Anyway, that's going to end our Game of Thrones podcast. It's called Recast.
Cast of Clowns.
Recast of Kings. Anyway. All right, that's quick, kids. Chris, let's wrap up some community feedback.
All right, welcome back to the community feedback section, loyal viewers and listeners. In the community feedback section, the Pop-O-Holics take care of some housekeeping. We typically talk about our upcoming Throwback Thursday episode on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Pop-O-Holics. We'll go over any poll results that we have over on our Twitter account at Pop-O-Holics. And then, of course, if you've written us a 5-star review on either Spotify or the Apple Podcast app, we'll read it here aloud in this section of the show. Preview of the jingle that we'll play. We don't have any 5-star reviews on this episode either, so we won't be reading anything, but I hope you enjoyed that jingle.
No, I got one. Greg says, it's great. Love the show. Christian's the best. Brian's the cute one. Nothing.
Thanks, Greg.
Nothing about Chris, though. Oh, well, also, fine. Bradley's the best guest you've ever had.
Still, that's insane that we already have a review talking about Brad when, as of this recording, it hasn't even aired yet. I'm just going to reiterate really quick. During our Predator month on our YouTube channel, if you subscribe to the channel and comment on any one of our videos from August, you can enter to win a 4K digital copy of the original Predator. So go ahead and do that. This is your last chance. This is the last week to do so. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment. That way you get that entrance and win a dope 4K transfer of that film.
Hell yeah.
Our Throwback Thursday episode coming out this Thursday is our conversation about the 1963 film, The Pink Panther. We were in a pretty dark place in 2020, folks, when this episode came out. And the Pop-O-Holics did, I think, 2 months of slapstick comedy, or was it just 1 month of slapstick comedy videos? I think, didn't we extend it? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
we watched Airplane,
folks,
Pink Panther.
We did watch Airplane, Pink Panther. We watched Tommy Boy. What else did we watch?
This is good podcasting.
Did we do Hot Rod?
We did watch Hot Rod as well. I think it was only a month.
One of the greatest films of all time.
It's up there.
Oh, yes.
So look forward to some ha-has coming up every Thursday on the Pop-O-Holics YouTube channel as we re-release all those episodes. Gentlemen, do you want to add anything about our conversation about the Pink Panther?
No, I just wanted to mock your delivery of, and we've got some delightful ha-has for the listening.
It's going to be extra hilarious.
It's going to be riveting, a real knee slapper. Eddie Allen or Rickman.
I'd never seen the Pink Panther. Hornier than I thought. And hilarious.
Pretty horny.
It's extremely horny. Solid movie.
Yeah. You ever want to get things started early in the bedroom? Pop on that Pink Panther.
Toss on the Pink Panther.
Peter Sellers, that aphrodisiac of a man.
Oh, yeah, he's fantastic.
He is great.
His movements will arouse any couple.
Especially if you're looking for a little bit of strange love. You catch my drift.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
On that note, Christian, where else can our loyal listeners and viewers find us online?
They can find us, we got a link tree We got a little link. It's a tree of links. Not unlike the redwood tree that is the Targaryen family history. It'll take you right to the source, baby. It is. We got social medias in there. If you're listening on the audio feed, we got a great YouTube where you can see our faces, where we do the weekly uploads, as well as the main reviews. And if you're watching the YouTube, in the show description, follow that same link. Subscribe on the audio feed for a little bit of podcast on the go. There's more episodes that you don't hear if you're subscribed on the YouTube that we do. But gentlemen, where can people find more of your work on the internet?
Brad, you're a guest. By all means, please go first.
Yeah, you can find me at Brad_film6 on both Twitter and Instagram. More active over on Instagram than I am on Twitter, admittedly. But yeah, you can follow me on there for all of the content about You've Got to See This and Recast Cast, as well as the music that I've been releasing. So yeah, just a lot of content over there, and check it out.
And loyal listeners and viewers, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, talking about all things nerdy, comic book, movies, television, video games, collectibles. If it's nerdy, I'm talking about it. And then, of course, you can find my nerdy writing on a monthly basis over on carefulforspoilers.com.
It's very hilarious. Please check it out as soon as possible.
I am the funniest member of the Pop-O-Holics.
The most expressive. And you can find me at True Pop-O-Holic.
You can find me at Christian Katie, and then my band Midnight Satire, new EP Augmented Reality streaming now. Music videos over at the Midnight Satire YouTube channel, so check that out. These two hunks are over on it. They're in a music video. It's very fun. We did a oneer. Bradley, you'd appreciate it. We did a oneer. One take.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then we was trying to get the cred, trying to get the street cred from the kids. They love the oneers. Anyway, that's it for the show.
All those 12-year-olds.
All those 12-year-olds. All right, that's going to do it for the show. We're going to close out the way that we do, which is with Christian's TikTok of the week.
For me, I really like corn.
What do you like about corn?
It's corn. A big corn enough. It has to do